debuting in 1985 and now in his 9th year in the 93-94 season, Patrick Ewing. He may be one of the highest tiered superstars in the NBA, but every year in the playoffs, he lost to Michael Jordan. So he had been booed off by the fans, and his pressure for the next season was very high. But right just then, the 3-year-in-a-row champion, Michael Jordan, had announced his retirement. And as soon as that happened, the race for the championship had begun. Ewing, who thought there was no one else to stop him now, with the mindset of getting the crown, played in the games with complete focus. The #1 defensive team, the New York Knicks, were stronger than ever and were a threat to everyone else, and many opposing teams fell before them without being able to do a single thing. The result of all that hard work was 60 wins and 22 losses, coming second in the Eastern Conference, and at the same time got a spot in the playoffs. And like a championship team contended should, they blew past the first round 3-1, and with that confidence of being able to beat any team, Ewing in the second round would suddenly meet the team that humiliated him so many times, the Chicago Bulls. But that was when they had Michael Jordan in the picture. Now, they only had his partner, Scottie Pippen, so Patrick Ewing had really nothing to fear. The New York Knicks brought the Bulls to their home, and from the first game they showed defense that was good enough that the Bulls couldn't even score 90 points. And Pippen had only gotten a 36% shot success rate, and in the second game had only gotten 33% success rate. On the other side, being in the best condition ever, Ewing got the most points on the team and took the momentum from the first 2 games into the third and poured down 34 points. And with 5 seconds left in the game, made an important tying clutch shot through their defense and saved the team from a loss. At the time, the atmosphere between these two teams were downright savage, sensitive about the outcome. After tying the game with 1.8 seconds left, Chicago's last shot had successfully gone in like a miracle, so the Knicks' momentum had been shut down. But different from the expectation of getting back the momentum, the New York Knicks lost again in the 4th game. So the second round was tied 2-2, and the fight for pride between Pippen and Ewing continued on to the 5th game. And from there, they would take a win each, and would have to go to the final 7th game. On this day, Pippen had the most points out of both teams, and Ewing showed great shooting, enough to make 3-pointers. And at the end of that, with a 10-point deficit, Patrick Ewing had taken the victory. The New York Knicks had won Chicago for the first time, and in the third round, the opponent would be the Indiana Pacers. Ewing, in the first 2 games, had put up 28 and 32 points, taking the victories. And in the next third game, out of nowhere, recorded 1 point. And he also recorded 0% in field goals. As a result, they lost by a 20-point deficit, and the Knicks shockingly had only put up 68 points. And after that, they lost to Indiana in the 4th and 5th game, so they were on the verge of getting eliminated if they lost another game. But just then, the leader of Indiana and the 3-point getter, Reggie Miller, had showed weak conditions in the 6th game. As a result, Ewing had the opportunity to make it to the 7th game. And from there, he put up 24 points and 22 rebounds, and even 5 blocks, showing an amazing performance, taking the victory. And for the first time, they took the Eastern Conference and were heading to the NBA Finals. Now, one more obstacle, and the championship trophy would be Patrick Ewing's. Having the same thoughts in the other side of the court was Hakeem Olajuwon, leading the Houston Rockets. The battle between the 2 best centers in the NBA got the attention of everyone out there. Back in the university days, Ewing had humiliated Olajuwon in the finals before, and he wanted to show that he was still on top once again. But, unexpectedly, the rhythm of the first game was running in Houston's favor. Using foot fakes as the base, Hakeem Olajuwon was a master at the dream shake and used that in the paint zone to make the Knicks players lose control. And as a result, put up 28 points by himself. And Ewing, on another note, shot 26 times, but only made 10 of them, showing an inconsistent performance. And other point getters showed a poor 16% success rate as well. They still managed to shut down Olajuwon in the fourth quarter and trailed by only 3 points, but unfortunately could not do any more. And because of a lot of turnovers and air balls, they would eventually lose by a 7-point deficit. To be exact, they both had great defense, so it was a dogfight where one had to completely be focused in order to get a point. And this was the same for the second game as well. But different from the first game, the New York Knicks were on top this time, and Ewing showed a surprising defense with 6 blocks, and the team had an average of 52% shot success rate, and Houston, who was trailing by a point, had suddenly trailed by 8 points because of the Knicks' success rate, and so they had won. So they were all tied up and heading into the third game, and this was a complete war zone. The battle of pride between the two key players of the teams had coincidentally both got 7 blocks each, showing how great they were on defense. So the result of the game relied on the rest of the teammates, and it was a battle between them. And the winning half of this fierce battle with a crucial 3-point shot after going neck to neck was the Houston Rockets. But in the next game, the New York Knicks players played even harder. And even though Ewing was stopped by Olajuwon this time, having a humiliating 28% field goal rate and 6 fouls getting fouled out, the rest of the team showed a great performance, and as a result, they tied the series 2-2 just barely. And to make up for his mistakes, Ewing entered the 5th game with a dying determination, getting 25 points and 12 rebounds and a shocking 8 blocks, showing how good he actually was. And the Houston Rockets, not being able to do anything about this beast-like performance, would eventually finish the game with a turnover and lose the game completely. And so it seemed like the finals were being handed over to the Knicks, who would become a champion after one more win. So obviously they tried to finish things up in the 6th game. But, different from what was expected, Patrick Ewing had a low 30% in the field. And on the other hand, Hakeem Olajuwon was showing great performance on offense and also on defense, and was leading by points right off the start. And of course, the New York players did not want to get humiliated and played hard so they could catch up. And at the end of this battle, they were in a situation where if they would make another 3-point shot, the game would be turned around. With 5 seconds left in the game, the #1 contributor to the team that day, John Starks, had gotten a great screen from Ewing and shot the final winning shot. But because of Olajuwon's will and determination and freakishly long arms, they were not able to take that victory. And Ewing and John Starks, getting frustrated by this, would enter the 7th game not wanting to lose, but showed poor offensive performance that left the fans in despair. At that time, John Starks shot 11 3-pointers and did not make a single shot, and Patrick Ewing, who was weaker when it came to speed and one-on-ones, was blocked completely by Hakeem Olajuwon. And because the two key players showed poor performances, the New York Knicks would eventually lose. And so, Patrick Ewing would lose a championship that he really thought he could have gotten this year right in front of him. Because he fell from a high area, he felt the loss even more, but Patrick Ewing would keep on trying to make it to the championship. And even though, because of his haunting knee injuries, his athletic abilities were slowly dropping, he still put up an average of 20 points and 10 rebounds, showing that he still had gas left in the tank. and the fans could still expect a championship from him. But, unfortunately, that dream was not able to become reality. And moving forward, for the 4 times they made the playoffs, they were eliminated every time in the second round. And out of those losses, in the first one, in the 1995 playoffs against the Indiana Pacers in the second round, they lost the first game completely against the team leader Reggie Miller. And the New York Knicks, in a situation with 18.7 seconds left, even though they had a solid 6-point lead, in 8.9 seconds would allow Reggie to get 2 3-point shots and 2 free throws, and lost the victory right in front of their eyes. And this was the famous incident that was known to be Miller time. On another note, losing by 2 points, Ewing, in the third and last game, would lose by 2 points again, so he would have to wait another year for the championship. And in the Eastern Conference he was a part of, with the return of Michael Jordan in the NBA, Ewing was a part of the Death Conference once again, and facing off against him in the second round, Ewing would lose completely by 4-1 against Michael Jordan. And a year later, he was eliminated by the Miami Heat, and the head coach at the time for Miami was none other than Pat Riley, who was a coach for the New York Knicks a short while ago, and left the team after the Miller time incident, and had signed a new contract with the Miami Heat. In the next 1988 playoffs, he was not able to show his best performance because of an injury in the regular season. His broken wrist and torn ligaments was definitely a season-out injury, but he asked his teammates to make it to the playoffs, and he promised that he would return for the playoffs, and he really did so. He returned in the second game of the second round. But because 5 months have passed, Ewing was not in the best condition to play, and he was only at a 27% shot success rate, and at the end, against Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers, would lose 4-1. And after his run for the NBA Finals, in the 4 times he made it to the playoffs, he could not go past the second round, not even once. Without any accomplishments, Patrick Ewing was now 36 years old. But just then, the 6-time champion Michael Jordan had announced his retirement once again. And with the 98-99 season ahead of him, Ewing did not want to lose this opportunity and went on the court like it was his last chance. Even though he was old, his leadership and presence in the paint zone was still there, and in the middle of the season, he hurt his Achilles tendon, but in order to keep the momentum in the team flowing, he came back in just 7 games and played again. As a result, the New York Knicks would make the playoffs by 1 win. Meanwhile, despite the fact that the Achilles tendon pain had been pretty bad because of all the games he had played, he still played in the first round, and against the Miami Heat in the first game, he showed godlike defense and won by a 20-point deficit. And because his mind had overcome his body, his will to win the championship helped him transcend human limits. He won against the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference, Miami Heat, 3-2, and in the second round, against the Atlanta Hawks, won 4 games in a row. After that, the opposing team in the third round was the Indiana Pacers once again, and Ewing was willing to do anything to make it to the finals again, and he played the most game time out of both teams and protected his paint zone, and despite all his injuries, he had won the first game. At the time, the Indiana head coach said, "Is he actually injured?" showing somewhat of respect for him. But at the end of the second game, his body was in such bad shape he wasn't able to even jump. With his Achilles tendon and knees a complete mess, he was in a condition where he could not play anymore. But because of his fighting spirit to play till he couldn't move anymore, his teammates were moved, and at the end of the round, they won against Indiana and made it to the finals. And even though they had lost 4-1 against the San Antonio Spurs, the mentality Patrick Ewing showed in that process made all the fans out there realize what it truly means to overcome yourself and win. After a long recovery through rehab, in the 99-2000 season, he tried for the championship again, but facing off against Reggie Miller in the third round, Patrick Ewing was eliminated. And because of the failures every year, he would eventually get criticized from the fans and the media. And getting tired of all the stories tearing him down and the booing from the fans, Patrick Ewing would eventually leave the New York Knicks on his own. After that, for a year at a time, he spent the remainder of his career in the Seattle Supersonics and the Orlando Magic, and as a backup member in the 01-02 season, he played his last year and announced his retirement, and at the same time left a remark that while he did have a satisfying time as a player, he regrets not being able to win the championship in the New York Knicks. But he still devoted 15 years and put his body on the line for that team, and many New York fans appreciated him. And so he was able to retire his number, and moving forward in 2008, he was put up in the Hall of Fame as well. After retiring, he spent 15 years gaining experience as a coach. He has now left the NBA and is currently the head coach for the university he graduated from, Georgetown University. The time is not set yet, but with Patrick Ewing living his second career, we can hope that he might lead the Knicks one day and give the old fans and himself the championship he couldn't get a long time ago, and finish his dream that he so longed for